know something, people? When somebody manages to take what was essentially just an old folk ballad, and a kind of silly one if you ever try to listen to the original version, and then make thousands of people cry manly tears over it, then you know they did something right. Something right.
Booker, are you afraid of God?
No. But I'm afraid of you.
So, what does Terminator Judgment Day, Shrek 2, The Legend of Korra, and Bioshock Infinite have in common? Well, they are amazing sequels to already good self-contained things who understand that the original story is in fact over and done with, and there is no point in just rehashing that. But that the universe itself of this franchise is in fact bigger than the original story, and there is room for expansion and taking the next step in a completely different direction. Instead of sticking around in the old, they have been using that as a solid foundation and platform for new things, having the freedom to take even bigger chances, and we are rewarded with an even bigger story that goes places most other things wouldn't even dare. Bioshock Infinite in particular seems to have a pretty interesting take on this, as it decides instead of being a rehash of the first Bioshock game, it becomes a sort of mirror image. Right from the start, where you just like the first Bioshock game into a lighthouse, but whereas in the first Bioshock game you take the stairs down to get to transportation that goes even further down, in this game you are taking the stairs up to transportation that goes even further up. While the first two Bioshock games took place entirely on the water in the city Rapture, this game takes place over the clouds in the city Columbia, which is an entirely new city full of its own plots and brainwashing. Which means we are no longer bound by Andrew Ryan or his philosophies, which Rapture itself was built around, but leaves the creators room to do whatever the hell they want in this new city, and do whatever they want with the new villain Comstock. While the first Bioshock games were all dark and focused on a small rampage place that sometimes felt kind of claustrophobic, this game has such a wide open space full of bright colors and all kinds of stuff. And that is not to speak of the gliding work, which is awesome! It's so much fun. Whee! Somehow it kind of feels like comparing Alien to Indiana Jones. A much more bloody, propaganda-filled Indiana Jones. So basically Indiana Jones taken to its absolute max. Which is an awesome idea! Hollywood, do it! In this game, we play as Booker DeWitt, and he is something brand new to this franchise. A main character with a voice and personality! Hooray! He is the classic bookcase of just about any other main character in a first-person shooter game, though. A white, middle-aged male with an alcohol problem and a gruff voice. But hey, he has a good sense of humor. And the setting really allows this character to shine anyhow. So we start off by going up into the clouds to immediately be met with my worst nightmare. Propaganda clearly meant for brainwashing masquerading as a higher cause, and this guy who forcefully baptizes you before you can even proceed.
Come and be cleansed. Hallelujah!
Hey.
I baptize you in the name of our prophet, in the name of our Lord.
I'm not entirely sure what it is you're selling, but I have a feeling the price is my soul. Then we move into Columbia itself and the horror continues. We are met with the most perfect looking thing imaginable. in bright colors with all these white people sitting around talking about how perfect and enlightened they are because they have been saved by the shepherd, and they are oh so lucky to be oh so enlightened and white and perfect and enlightened and better than everybody else and so enlightened. Oh yes, I am so enlightened and white and perfect and enlightened, my God. Perfect little me. And everything is just so perfect and white and bright, and you know this is brainwashing that is going on here. You know hell is going to break loose sooner or later, but it just won't come. Please, let hell break loose, I beg of you, I can't take it. You got a thing in your facial area. Yep, a while in, it finally happens. All of hell almost literally breaks loose as you refuse to take part in an act of racism. And people is now calling you the false shepherd due to a tattoo on your hand. So now this entire oh so enlightened city is after you with guns and everything else God oh so always approved of. Because as we all know, if Jesus ever taught us anything, it is thou shalt not turn your cheek the other way, but just kill that motherfucker with a gun. Okay, obviously this game is having a big stab at Christianity, criticizing it quite a lot and playing it up to the extreme, and right now I'm just adding fuel to the fire. Personally, I have nothing against Christianity as an idea and what it fundamentally is about or is supposed to be. In my view, religious movements exist for a reason. To comfort people when things turn a bit too dark or meaningless for some. And sometimes that is indeed a much needed comfort that can save lives. However, once you start using it as a means to control people or brainwashing people or reasoning why some are higher or enlightened, more enlightened than others, then that mess gets fucked up. This entire opening sequence actually showcases perfectly well what I really dislike about any extremist movements. Not just religious movements, but all kinds of extremism. A group of people fall together under one leader, feel like they in particular have been wrong, but got all the answers because they are also enlightened now. Then dupes a lot of dumb people into following them for this higher cause, and they really nurture this feeling among themselves and each other that they really are higher beings while everybody else are lesser beings for not following or believing this cause to the extreme like they do. It's promoting anti-thinking. Instead of thinking for yourself, just give yourself to this cause and follow without question. Then when I say shoot the shit out of somebody, you just do it without question. Movements like that is all about having people who doesn't have to think for themselves, but just following a lead without questioning or doubting, or by God say something that doesn't go strictly with what they want you to say. It's messed up and wrong no matter where it comes from, and responding to such a movement with a movement of equal measure is just as wrong, as these games actually do point out eventually. Anyhow, you are now losing Columbia, and plot point number 2 enters as you need to save main character number 2, a young woman called Elizabeth, whom in a way is actually the true main character of this game. The entire story actually seems to be her coming of age story. As we first encounter her, she is the first genuinely nice and pure thing we see. All the others claims to be pure and so on, but clearly they aren't, only pretentious. As Elizabeth becomes a companion, she is optimistic and naive and believes in the good things of Columbia. But as the game goes on, Elizabeth has her eyes open, so she changes perspective, she loses her naivety, and thusly changes personality. This is though extremely well written and presented so it feels deeply natural. Her journey feels natural, and the friendship that blossoms between her and Book are also very natural. As for the most part, this just seems like two small people merely trying to escape the insanity of Colombia, where two sides so much bigger than them are pretty keen on just killing each other in very brutal ways. Then of course there is the dimension hopping. As it turns out, Elizabeth has a special ability, the ability to rip open tears in dimensions.
Wait, what are you doing?
Opening a tear!
Oh, shit! What?
So you can jump through dimensions into parallel worlds, where people have made slightly different choices that has ended up having massive impact. Now, when it comes to such a plot point as dimension hopping, we are kind of running into the same problem as with time travel. Basically,
But actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
yeah, we just kind of need to accept that not everything is going to make sense. I'm sure, world mechanically speaking, there will be some plot holes when you start prodding around a bit in it a bit more. But again, you know, sometimes you just kind of need to accept stuff like that to enjoy the really good ride. Yes, what you need to accept here is when you start on such a plot device as time travel or dimension hopping, there will be some holes in the logic of the world mechanic. However, what you need to accept then is that it's the characters who carries us through the story and is the center of this solid story. The two of them are the constant, they are the solid foundation, the rest is just filling. And thankfully, Booker and Elizabeth more than handles that aspect well. Their personal journey carries the story beautifully and gives it the emotion and gravity it needs. Story-wise, the biggest sin Bioshock Infinite commits is to be overambitious. While the first Bioshock games seemed very contained and straight to the point with only very few side steps, this one goes bigger, take bigger chances, and thusly ends up way crazier places. It means the flaws are bigger, but the payoffs also that much grander. Kind of like The Legend of Korra. The controls are largely the same as the first two Bioshock games, but fine-tuned, so they are the smoothest, easiest controls in the entire Bioshock franchise. That makes it all a smooth, fun ride, without too much confusion from all the madness going on all around the place. It was the Bioshock game I had the least troubles with doing shootout battles, and I had an easiest time with when making sneak attacks. Once again, you have multiple kinds of guns and superpowers to play around with, so the way to approach enemies and kill them are many, and you will probably end up picking a tactic you prefer. That's kind of part of the fun though. And now, it's spoiler time. In a franchise like this, which has always been a bit about the twists. Of course, this game has the motherlode of all twists by the ending, and to discuss the themes of the game, I kinda have to talk about the big twists. And well, if you haven't played the game yet, but is watching this video, I guess you probably already know that you shouldn't be watching this video, you should be playing the game, and you certainly shouldn't be watching from this point, you should be playing the bloody game. But you are still watching, so whatever, let's move on. But I just told you, now it's spoiler time. By the end of the game, you get to travel to what I guess is basically limbo. The space in between the different dimensions, in between the worlds, where the doors to all the different dimensions with all the different possibilities are to be found. And this is where we find out the big twist of the game. The Booker has actually been in an alternative dimension all the time from the beginning, and that Comstock, the big villain, is actually himself Booker if he had made a slightly different choice at an earlier point in life. What is so mind-blowing about this revelation is once again how it becomes a sheer mirror image to the first Bioshock game. In the first Bioshock game, the main character, and thusly you, the player, is led to believe that he's very important, that he's an important guy, and what he does is important and have consequences. But the twist reveals that all he ever did or thought that he did was ultimately meaningless and pointless, and he never ever had any choice in the matter. He was powerless all the time. Though by the ending we the player still got to decide the big outcome of the story based on whether we harvest the Little Sisters or not. In this game though, Booker and Elizabeth are led to believe they are just the two small people caught in the middle of this massive war which they have no control over. Booker is the small fry and all he wants to do is to escape this hellhole. He's told by other people what to do and he hates it. Though by the end of the day, we find out that Booker did in fact have all of the say all the freaking time. Everything that happens is based around the different choices he has made or could have made. He had all of the choice. We even see multiple different realities which are largely different based solely on the choices his other self happened to have made in those universes. In fact, everything else seems to be a constant in these universes, more or less. And the only figure that really changes is actually him, justly affecting the entire world around him. Yet it's still the first Bioshock game with a fixed ending you can't change. Total mirror image. The Bioshock games has always been about freedom and choice, questioning those very concepts and ask you to think about it. The first game was all about thinking you have a choice, but is in reality powerless to other people's ploy. This game is all about realizing that even the small things you decide upon can have a massive impact on others and the world around you. And both games are really good at exploring each their own concept. It's not answering so many questions, but it's begging you to think about it. That's another thing many games, including the Bioshock franchise, has been accused of, for promoting mindless, non-thinking gun violence. I honestly don't think that's true at all. On the contrary, these games question the meaninglessness of all of that. There's nothing glorified about any of these killings. At one point, Elizabeth calls you a monster, and rightfully so.
I can't believe you did that. They're all dead. You killed those people.
Elizabeth,
You're a monster.
what did you think was going to happen?
What?
Do you understand the expense that people went through to keep you locked up in that tower? You think people like that are just going to let you walk away? You are an investment, and you will not be safe until you are far away from here.
What do they want from me?
I don't know.
You really get where she's coming from because the game has already shown you that and let you experience it. When you finally do encounter Comstock and ultimately kill him, there's nothing glorious about it at all. On the contrary, you are left with such an odd, weird feeling about it. Kind of like you did when Andrew Ryan died. It doesn't really feel like any achievement at all. You just stand there with a big, yeah, why? Because at the end of the day, what these villains had were in fact all good intentions, just so messed up because some of these people started to gain a god complex and succeeded to make other people believe in their rantings, or at least attempt some people to become followers with a promise of power and wealth and happiness. Yet by the end of the day, it's all for what? What was it for? I don't know. That you can sit around drinking tea with your like-minded brainwashed friends and relish in how enlightened and perfect you are in comparison to all those poor smucks out there with brown skin and Irish accents. Was that worth it? Does that make you happy? I think what Bioshock has managed to really show is that gaming and also first-person shooter can in fact be more than just hollow entertainment. And even though it aims to be more, it doesn't have to lose the fun factor at all. Hell, I really feel like this game has so much more to say than a lot of other games which takes themselves way too seriously. That's actually how I feel about all fictional works in general. If the work doesn't have a sense of humor but wants to be super duper serious, chances are it really didn't have that much to say the first time around, but wants to trick you to make you think that it's clever even though it isn't, and it's just serious and angsty and all the most jarring, heartfelt messages and questions oftentimes comes from the same places that also made me laugh and enjoy myself the very most. What is most ironic about this game is that the people whom has criticized it the most are kind of, the exact kind of people that these games has been criticizing. Do you realize how extremist groups of any kind of all, usually grow so large? It's pretty simple actually. It's something or someone appealing to people whom already are vulnerable and already feel so vulnerable and scared. People whom already are afraid is the target. And then you just exploit the hell out of that fear, feed the fire, and whisper in their ear, it's true, you have a right to be afraid, and then fight back with fire, join my cause and fight this thing with fire, it's true, you have a right to be scared, it's true. Then you put all these people into the same room, the same group, and they feed each other's fire while pumping each other up. Suddenly a person can feel like they are a part of a group, a part of something bigger, and something to fight for and fight against. They look at each other and tell each other how good they are and how right they are, and because you have another person right beside you who tells this is right, you don't need to listen to those other people far away who maybe have a different perspective. And then of course we have the group pressure thing. Group pressure is a factor. Basically, a good propagandist, no matter what the issue is someone whom is able to grab people's fear and exploit the hell out of it, whether or not it's well-founded. Sometimes it is well-founded, but fighting against it like that just ends up with more things that also are wrong. And sometimes it's not that well-founded, but it's a scary world, people are afraid. This is, of course, an excellent game, and an important one. Any game journalist should play it all the way through. Not just the first scene, all the way through, guys. It's available for the PS3, Xbox, and on Steam. And anyone whom is into gaming journalism or talking about women in gaming or just how far gaming has gone, again should play it and play it all the way through. And that is not even to talk about the Apple DLC Burial at Sea, which is so good that it honestly deserves its own video. So yeah, that is what we are going to talk about next time, and hopefully it won't be a month again this time. I'm sorry about that, but an awful lot of stuff has happened in my real life, and anybody who has followed my Facebook kind of knows this. It has been really insane. But I'm back now, and hopefully things will come out a bit more regularly. Hopefully. And a last note, for those who have called this game or the entire Bioshock franchise sexist, yes, there's actually been people out there using Bioshock, and this game in particular, of all things, as a reasoning why video games are sexist. Well, to those people, seriously, we are going to talk more about why I feel that way later in a accompanying video. I guess somebody already looking forward to that. See you next time.